Greetings, everybody. Robin here from Courage is the Cure. And today on Relentless, we're going to be speaking to Rich from RPW Media, all the way over there in the good old US of A. We'll see you in a jiffy. Alrighty, welcome to episode 114 of Relentless. It is the 20th of August 2025, and today we're going to be speaking to Rich from RPW Media in the US, as I mentioned before. Rich talks about headlines, believe it or not. It's called Unpacking Headlines. Imagine that, and somebody's talking about headlines, about the political and cultural landscape, if you like. Debunking mainstream narratives and shining a light on, what could we say, underreported truths, perhaps. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Rich to the stage. Hello, Rich. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Robin? Good to see you again.
Yes, it's fantastic to see you again. For people watching, and I'm going to say hello to everybody on YouTube. We're streaming to YouTube, which is very unusual for Relentless, Rich, I must say. But for people in the audience watching, we have spoken before, and we both joined 42, a wonderful anonymous Irish poet, on his
Yep.
show a little while ago now. And yeah, it is a great pleasure to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
My description of yourself there, I'm hoping you might be able to elaborate on it for our audience and tell everybody about yourself and RPW Media.
Yeah, years ago, I started writing for a guy, David Harris Jr. Don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was a black Christian conservative Trump supporter, so we considered him a unicorn in the United States at that time, back in 2016. And he became a huge influencer, and I started writing for him, and I got pretty popular through him, of course. And then when Facebook actually started, they were censoring him up to about 95% of his audience, because that's what they did back then in the United States. They conservatives couldn't speak, so he had to give that up. And I created my own RPW Media, and went through the same censorship. But I never did it. I know this is going to sound so cliche, but I never did it for money. I did it to get word out. I did it to debunk the leftist narratives, which were pretty strong back then. They still are, but they're not being focused on as much because over here we've shifted. And I see a lot of the same types of shifts going on throughout the world, actually, in many countries throughout the world. They're becoming nationalists again, which the left tries to make a very dirty word, but nationalism is just love of your country. And that's what our whole America First movement is about. It's not America alone. It's we take care of our own people, then we take care of the others in the world. We don't forget anybody, especially our allies. But our government, for the longest time, and I'm sure many other governments, went globalist and started worrying about people from outside our country before our own country. And it got to the point where we had a little revolution. And we said, there's a guy who's tough. I'm talking Trump now. He's very tough. Sometimes he's hard to listen to. He could ruin your sensibilities, but many of us love him because he does the things that he said he's going to do. There's no surprises in what he does, and he has the boldness to go forward and do it. And it's many things right now that he's doing. So there you have it. I'm just a guy who was a conservative in America. I know that means something different from what others believe conservatives are. We believe in our Constitution, and we believe that it is the law of the land, and that we should live by it as much as humanly possible. But I'm also a populist nationalist now, which a lot of people say you can't be all three. You can't be a conservative and a populist nationalist. I believe you can to an extent. So that's me. Hi,
Isn't it
everybody.
nuts that, you just mentioned nationalism there and being America first, imagine that, and for some reason, things get turned around and that automatically shoves you or pigeonholes you into this sphere of somehow being bigoted or
Right,
whatever other label people wanna attach to you caring about America first and
right,
being a nationalist. Um, just before we went live, I did say to you that I'm very happy to have you here, especially to talk about Trump. And this isn't a Trump show before people in the audience go, "Oh,
right.
here we." Hello, Dr. Linnett. How are you? Thank you for watching. Um, it's not a Trump show, but you've just said nationalism, America first. Trump does the things that he says he's going to do. I'm really interested to hear from an actual American because even
Very
though,
good.
you know, we are in the independent media sphere, and we do hear things that the general public doesn't ordinarily hear about. But as I'm aware, and I'm sure you are as well, we do get forced into a kind of echo chamber simply because of the algorithms, and they don't want people actually hearing what we're saying. So
Right,
I'm really interested to hear from an American about Trump because we see all sorts of posts, and then I see some other posts from independent people who say, well, Trump actually hasn't done these things and he's not actually caring about the people, and they're not actually seeing the money in their pocket, and all these sorts of
right.
things. Can you give us a short, sharp rundown of the the uh the time that you've had in the second presidency with Trump?
Right, sure. Yeah. So Trump made a lot of promises, and if you're familiar with his first term, they had a saying that was promises made, promises kept. So every time he kept a promise and signed it into law, that was the message that went out. Hey, unlike you know most other politicians, he does what he says he's going to do. Now this time around, now I'm just going to say it. We believe that the 2020 election was stolen. We have a bunch of evidence for it. Um, the left didn't want to listen to us, which is fine. But I sometimes sit back and I think, that was kind of a blessing because he had 4 years. When he first went in 2017, when he started his first term, he didn't really know anybody politically. He was not a politician. He's still not a politician, even though he is you know what I'm saying? He doesn't
Yeah.
they don't like the way he speaks because he doesn't speak like this, right? So he speaks his mind. He's a lot better now than he used to be because even Trump supporters used to go, "Oh, I can't believe he just said that," right? But he's a lot better now because he's getting more savvy. However, he had 4 years to really think about what he should have done in his first term that he's doing now, which was, we call it draining the swamp, which
Mhm.
is getting rid of the NGOs that are all run, most of them anyway, are run by politicians or their minions that work for them. And we were funding them all through USAID. And I'm sure you heard about removing all the funds from USAID and killing all those projects because what we discovered through Doge, right? Elon Musk did the Doge department
Mhm.
for a while. And what they discovered was that most of that money went to the globalists. And the globalists were trashing the United States, as they always do. They were trashing the United States, especially during the Trump years. And so, what Trump is doing is he is systematically destroying the deep state as we know it. And a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but I see it as He is trying to bring us back to a constitutional republic in the best way he knows how, which is get rid of the globalists, and do things that the problem is Trump, everything he does, he talks with his big lawyers who are smarter than him on the subject before he does it. And he sets the, it's a beautiful thing to watch. He sets the left up, um, by doing things that he's doing, and then they take him to court, and the Supreme Court slams them and says, no,
Mhm,
actually, a president has always had this type of authority. It's just that no
mhm,
president really wanted to do it because most of them were with the globalists, if you will. The deep state, I believe, there really is a deep state, and what it is it's a mentality that goes through the permanent class in DC, the people that have been there through presidents for, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years. And
yep,
they are right now at a point where they say, you know what, survival of my job is, they've been this way for decades, but survival of my job is more important than the Constitution, more important than the welfare of the country. And
yep.
Trump is trying to end that. And because he does it unapologetically, the left has mental meltdowns, and there's been a lot of them going on recently.
I one thing I really enjoy about getting the clips from the left is now they actually make their own memes in real time. We don't have to do any editing or, they actually make the memes in real time. One of the things that I hadn't heard of, I spent some time living in America in Tennessee,
Nice.
and this I used to hear it, hanging around, chatting to people as you do. This whole thing about old money and new money. I mean, Australia is such a young country. We don't have, the history that America does, and we certainly don't have a conversation about old money and new money. And just thinking about draining the swamp, and people are preoccupied with, saving their bank balance or, their hip pocket, as opposed to caring about the Constitution or, anything to do with America. Um, I uh, I think it's sometimes difficult for, I guess, like other countries equally,
All right.
for people perhaps to get a grasp on what is actually happening in America, and if indeed, this is a question, if indeed Trump is actually not only doing what he says he's going to do,
Right.
but doing the things that we all want him to do that he can't say out loud. Is he doing those things?
Well, it depends. Name some of the things that we can't say out loud because he says them out
Well,
loud.
I could put up one of my favourite videos that I've produced myself from one of my shows. Is that, we get these posts from Maha saying Maha wins. We've got the colours out of the food, all this stuff, and
Right.
I've
Right.
made some posts saying, well, we're still giving everybody the ye olde Britney Spears, aren't we? And so I know that's top of mind for my audience, that's for sure. And people want to talk about the 5D chess game, and it's very complicated, and all of these types of things. So that's just one example of the things that Trump doesn't talk about that everyone's hoping that he's actually doing something about.
Right.
Um, so not specifically talking to that point, but as far as draining the swamp, a lot of things that they can't talk. I mean, Epstein, all the rest of it. Are there actually things, in your opinion, that Trump is engaged in that is draining the swamp, so to speak, that he actually can't talk about?
Well, if you can't talk about it, I'm not really going to know about it, but I can speculate. Okay.
I
But
know that's so weird, isn't it? Yet
I
we
know it
all
is. It is.
speculate.
Yeah,
We all
I'm
speculate
not one of
about
the
it.
ones that he calls, "Hey, Rich, guess what?" I'm not one of those, but I do know several people that I have as sources that his people do contact. But um, I think,
You
see,
know what I mean, though, right?
I know. We're only in August of the first year. I keep telling people, and a lot of people. on my side of the aisle, they think, well, it's August, he should be done everything already, and it's like it takes time to go through things. But what I think he's trying to do, the first phase, okay,
Right.
of this second presidency of his. I think what he's trying to do is he is trying to drain the swamp. He is trying to make things fair. He's not trying to make things. I know a lot of people aren't going to believe this, but he's not trying to make things the way the Democrats have done for 60 years or more, which is rig the system in the favor of his party. He truly
Mm-hmm.
wants. He truly wants. Uh, I don't know what to call it, but fairness in our system. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the things he's doing right now that I told you I wanted to talk about is redistricting. Now I know that you guys in Australia, you have it's called the Australian Electoral Commission, I believe it is. And
Yes, the
yeah, and
ANC.
yeah, yeah, and I know that it's responsible for determining like electoral boundaries and stuff like that. But in here in the United States, state legislatures, according to our Constitution, it's in Article 1, and it's Section 4, if anyone wants to look it up. It says that state legislatures have the authority to create election laws. And that means that judges do not, and it means that executive branch people do not. And yet they've systematically violated that rule for years. I'll give you an example. Leading up to 2020, okay, to the election, we had a guy named Mark Elias, who's a lawyer, and he comes from Perkins Coie law firm. Perkins Coie is a DC law firm. In fact, Perkins Coie is the law firm that Hillary Clinton gave all that money to, and they
Huh.
hired Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS was an opposition research company, and then they went and hired a guy by a former British spy named Christopher Steele, and Christopher Steele hired some Russians, FSB agents, if you will, post KGB supposedly, and they gave for the money they gave him a bunch of garbage about Trump, and then they used that to create the infamous Steele dossier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Mark Elias, that it's that Perkins Coie. So Mark Elias was the lawyer that when Democrats want to cheat in elections, they go to him. And what he did, not just in I live in Pennsylvania, okay, and it's in the Northeast, and not just in my state, which is a swing state, but he sent his legal teams right before the 2020 election into left-wing courts, if you will, in these swing states, and they argued against mail-in ballot laws, and they got a bunch of activist judges that made some pretty bad rulings. And in fact, my state's Supreme Court, which is ruled, I believe at the time it was 7-2 Democrat. And so the Republicans really had no say. Okay. And so what they
Mm-hmm.
did was they changed election law, which I just got done saying. Article 1, Section 4 of our Constitution says only a state legislature can. And they changed election law to extend the mail in ballot deadline for when you receive mail in ballots by 3 days. The law was called Act 77. It was a Republican legislature that said that the deadline was 8 p.m. election day. Okay. They
Mm-hmm.
extended it 3 days. We found out later on they extended it 3 days because they needed to know how many votes Joe Biden needed to win the election, how many to fabricate. And you guys can go to here'stheevidence.com and you'll spend 8 days reading all of the evidence that there was, that everybody on the left says, oh, there was no evidence of election fraud. There was a plethora of it. So my point is that Trump is trying to end that kind of stuff because
Mm-hmm.
when we firmly believe on our side that if you, when I say our side, I mean the conservative nationalist populists, okay? We firmly believe that the closer we get back to living under our Constitution, because right now we really don't. It's been bastardized for so many years, that the closer we get back to living under our Constitution, the faster that we remedy a lot of the problems that our country has. And admittedly, we have a lot of problems, but it's basically because we have strayed off the constitutional path. So one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I'm going to bloviate here, if you don't mind, one of the things is that we're doing redistricting. And in the United States, as I said, the state legislatures are able to do that. Now, the Republicans, and this was a Trump idea, he threw this at Republican governors. We have many red states here, and in the red states, many of them have what are called super majorities. So there's nothing Democrats can do. Texas is one of them. Now, Texas has been getting all the news lately. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they have a redistricting map that they want to escalate here. And so they wanted to do the vote, and Texas Democrats, 50 of them, I believe, they fled the coup. They flew over to the next state just to stop a quorum, so that the Republicans couldn't vote. Well, it backfired on them. The Republicans were able to do it anyway, but they then told these Democrats that, when you come back now, you're going to face consequences because you can't just leave your jurisdiction when you've sworn an oath. I mean, they left when the Texas State House, they had horrible floods recently, just devastating floods, and there was relief money that they wanted to vote on. That a lot of it came from FEMA, but they had to handle how it was going to be distributed, and they wanted to help these people. And here the Democrats, took off. You can't have a vote, right? And so and they didn't realize that. Right, they don't think ahead of time. It's short run hedonistic, if you ask me. And so what happened was, the Democrats, they throughout the country, they see that the Republicans are doing redistricting, which is we redraw our maps, and it's usually favorable to the party that runs the state. Democrats have done this for 60 years, but there's a lot that's going on. Despite the fact that the Democrats and the left are saying right now, whatever party's in power, they gerrymander. We call it gerrymandering. They will do it to their own districts. And the thing that Trump is working on, that he spent 4 years thinking about, is that the Democrats, since at least 1986, they've been doing what is called racial districting. So in order to understand this, we have to go back. We have to rewind to 1965 USA, where something awful, terrible happened in Selma, Alabama. All right, everybody remembers it as Bloody Sunday. Okay, it was a bunch of Klansmen attacked black people inside Alabama. So that's a group of Americans tried to cross a bridge. It was that simple. But in response, President Johnson, LBJ, who was a very despicable man, but he actually signed, which was a good thing. He signed the Voting Rights Act, and a lot of people hear about that. We talk about it all the time. The goal was to guarantee that Black Americans could vote freely and without discrimination. It was a fair and noble intention. But here's where it gets nasty, okay? In the 1980s, 1986, Democrats realized that they could use that law for something else. So they started using the Voting Rights Act as a political weapon, crafting what's known as majority minority districts. And that's areas designated so minority voters would make up the majority. Now, how do you do that? Well, think of it this way. Ready? So this is a district, right? According to our Constitution, it was supposed to be 32,000 people make up a district. Well, we've exploded in population like everybody else. So now it's 350,000 people get one guy, one member of the House of Representatives. And with each member of the House, you get an elector, which is to our electoral college. So it's big time politics there. You're voting to elect a president. Okay. So think about it this way. Here's the entire district, right? So over here, you have a Black community of, say, maybe 20,000 people in a city, right? And then 10 miles away, you have another city, almost similar in the same county, right? Almost similar. And here what they did was there was, in 1986, there was a case, it was a Supreme Court case called Thornburg v. Gingles. And that's when everything changed. It was Gingles' case concerned North Carolina's legislative redistricting plan that they say violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, okay? So what the Democrats did was they said, okay, so they called it voter delusion. That's what the court called it, meaning that they should have never done this because you don't do things by race unless you're trying to remedy a real problem with race, okay? What they did instead was they abused the Gingles case, and nobody stopped them because the Supreme Court never stepped in. But what they did is those two districts I told you about, they would say, okay, this is a district, and then we're going to go the district will remain just the width of this road for 10 miles, if you will, and it's going to connect to this other city. Okay, so now you've got two cities in the same county, right, that that
Mhm.
that these people have nothing in common except their skin color. Okay, they really
Mhm.
do. I mean, over here you vote for a different sheriff than you do over here, different school board. There's all kinds of things that are different, but because of race, they wanted to connect them. So it not only created a new district for the Democrats, but it completely exploded the district that was already there. Because now you don't have 350,000 people, so you got to siphon them off here and there to the surrounding districts. So it was a scheme that they did since 1986, and it completely redrew the maps to rig elections in their favor, and it worked. This is how Democrats have been in control of this country for
Mhm.
so many years. And so what's going on is Gingles established a three-part test that lowered the bar for Democrat activists. Okay. Right now, Trump is taking advantage of what's known as a case Louisiana v. Clay. And for Clay's argument was that this racial redistricting, these majority minority, they're saying that the majority of this district will be minority people. I don't know how that works. You're either a majority or you're not, right? So
Yeah.
what Clay is going to do is, and the Supreme Court, they punted it to the next session, which starts in October. Okay, first Monday in October it starts, and they said we will look at this case, and it's
Mhm.
important because they seem to be poised to throw out racial gerrymandering. Okay, so when they do that, and we hope and pray they do because it's the right thing to do. When they do that, it means that Republicans almost overnight will gain about 25 seats in the House of Representatives, which will put them in the majority for a very long time because it was unfair how they used race in order
Mhm.
to gain power for all these years. So Trump is very much behind that, which is why he supported Texas and what they are doing. Now, the Democrats on the other side will argue with you saying they're trying to steal an election. Well, actually, no, they're doing what is in the Constitution that gives them the authority to do it. And we had Hakeem Jeffries, who is their minority leader in the House right now, and he said, "Oh, they have the audacity to do redistricting in the middle of a decade." And I was shocked. I could have fallen on the floor. The CNN reporter literally countered, saying, "Well, you guys did that under Obama. What are you talking about?" And
Mhm.
Jeffries was embarrassed. He was like, he didn't even know that the Democrats did it because they do it all the time. What the
Mhm.
Republicans are doing right now, and so what's going on with this redistricting is we are getting the country back to where it was supposed to be from our constitution. You have a community in a district. It doesn't matter your race, your sex, your gender, any ism. It doesn't matter. You're all people who live together in a community, and you should be represented together in a community instead of trying to split them up just to gain power. And that's a big thing that's going on right now in the United States. And when we finally come out on the other side, I think that the country's going to do a lot better than it is right now. Um, and that's one of those things that people don't talk about that Trump's involved in. He's very
It
involved in it. He supports it wholeheartedly, and he's trying to talk other states to do it. And right now, we have Ohio is about to do their own redistricting. So is Tennessee, where you used to live. They're going to do it. And there's about, I know Florida's, Ohio's going to bring in about three more. They're saying that as of right now, this moment, that after the midterms, that the Republicans will start with 217 in the House. You only need 218 to get the majority. The
Mhm.
Democrats have between 40 and 50 seats that are up for grabs. We know we're going to get at least one, right? But they're saying that they could start with 230 once this redistricting is done, which is an amazing thing. And a lot of people, oh, it's not fair. Well, what's fair? Having power due to projected racism because a certain group of people live amongst a larger group of people,
Yep.
or going back to constitutional terms that I mean, in a republic, you have a constitution. That's what keeps everybody safe. At least I believe that. Okay, because
Yep.
when you have things like a democracy, I mean, I always say a democracy is two guys just voted that they get to keep everything the third guy owns. That's democracy. It's majority rules. But in a republic, you have a constitution, which is just basically a set of laws and rules that you say, look, everybody has to live by this. The problem is that for the last, I would say, 100 years, we haven't lived under that. We've lived under one party or the other trying to rig things in their favor, and Trump wants to end all of that.
Mm.
That's what he wants to do.
That's very interesting, and obviously being an Aussie, I can't help but think about Australia. We obviously, for everyone in the audience, we just had our federal election in May, if my memory serves me well. But just before that, we had our state election here in Western Australia, and I did some research because I was covering that. And, a few decades ago, talking about redistricts, if you like, um, in my state, which is the largest state in Australia, we have a phenomenal uh, amount of acreage that belongs to farmers. And, there was a concerted effort to change the zones so that the farmer's voice, which was traditionally very strong and held a certain weight of power through elections and ultimately the people's voice when we're being ruled by our overlords,
Yeah.
was diminished because they rezoned the electorates. And just doing that research, it was absolutely clear. And we did have a rezoning again just before our previous state election, and it completely obliterated
Mm.
the farmer's voice. And whether or not it's a conspiracy theory and my tinfoil hat is too tight, in Western Australia over the past few months, we've had uh, gun laws and gun restrictions change to such a degree that is not for protecting
Mm.
your everyday citizen. I would allege it's for another reason. And so to enable or disable farmers' voices who are gun owners to not have such a strong voice in our previous election, I think was not a mistake. I think it was by
Intentional.
design.
Hmm.
And these grubby creatures do all of these sorts of things to make sure that people don't have a voice. So I I mean, that's one of the things, I certainly haven't heard about, even with, all of the independent media watching that I do, with countries all around the world. I haven't heard about this in the US, so that's, very good, to hear from you. Just on the Constitution, because we do
Hmm.
have a constitution here in Australia, not like, the US one. We do have a lot of people that are in different movements, if you like, trying to get back to the Australian Constitution, and people are very passionate about that. And I'm not trying to take away from people's passion for that, but I certainly do know that during the Britney Spears era, the Constitution in Australia did not protect anybody, despite it should do so, did not protect anybody from being coerced, if you like. Um, what is the conversations that people are having in America and where it stands right now and looking to the future with the Constitution in America actually protecting people, if we ever had another similar situation like we did with the Britney Spears era?
Yeah. Uh, okay. What we have to do, conservatives over here, and liberals as well. There are plenty of liberals left in the United States. I say there are. All right. Let me start this way. Liberals and conservatives in the United States can get along. We can because we share the same goals. For example, liberals don't like dirty water and dirty air. Okay, conservatives don't like it either. We just differ on how we get there. Whereas
Mm,
conservatives believe that capitalism will be a better way, better filters are what stopped a lot of the pollution from manufacturing plants here in the United States. But on the other side, the left, the Democrats, they believe that government force is a better solution. So we have the same goals, just different ideas. But then the left came along and they changed everything, because neither of us have anything in common with leftists. While we're worried about dirty water and dirty air and things like that, they're worried about getting boys in the girls' bathrooms in schools and in sports and stuff like that. So we just throw them out. Okay. But the problem is that our people, as far as their constitutional rights and privileges, have been so dumbed down intentionally. This is
Mm.
why I believe this is one of the reasons why Jimmy Carter, that we call him that Democratic prank known as President Jimmy Carter, that he added education to a cabinet level. And number one, it was a payback to the teachers' unions for throwing all the dues monies at his campaign to get him elected. But number two, we believe that it was to make our Department of Education, um, not to educate the children, but it was a jobs program for adults. That's what we
Mhm.
believe it became, which is why Donald Trump is ending the Department of Education. It's funny, I can't remember her
Mm.
name, but he appointed a woman as the Secretary of Education. Forgive me, I can't believe I don't remember her name right now. But when he did it, he said, that you're going to have the most short-lived career as a secretary on a cabinet, because we're getting you to end the Department of Education. And people go, oh no, how are you going to learn? Well, our people learned just fine. In fact, they learned better before the Department of Education came along.
Mm.
So,
Yep.
so my point is that they have dumbed down our country so bad in education that we need to find ways to teach people. I'm talking grown adults. I'm talking lawyers and judges, okay, who
Mm.
don't understand many things that are in our Constitution. And
Mhm.
and I'll give you my little version. I'll be quick. Um, of our Constitution, we started out with a thing called the Articles of Confederation, and it basically, this was before we had our Constitution. It basically was, okay, we got this federal government, and they're just going to give you a bunch of guidelines. You can handle them or not, okay? And it was a complete disaster, because what happened was they learned that, um, among the several states at the time. Okay, now a state here is a country. That's how we think of it. All right. The union is all those countries that came together. So each state has their own rules, their own laws, their own ways of doing things, norms, folkways, all that. Okay. And and so what happened was they believed that they needed a federal entity unlike the articles for what we have now, which was, believe it or not, our federal government, if you read our Constitution, is only supposed to be an agent to the states for the purpose of nationhood. So, in other words, it lists, in
Mhm.
fact, you can read, if you're familiar with the Federalist Papers, okay, there were three founding fathers that wrote the Federalist Papers, and all they were these essays they were putting in newspapers, and it was to convince the governor, whose name was Clinton, by the way. It was to convince the governor of New York to sign on to the union. Okay, it was a huge deal, and it has become, the Federalist Papers are something that many courts refer to, because we accept them as truth, that this is the way that the founders wanted our Constitution to be. And if you
Mhm.
read Federalist 45, which was written by James Madison, who we consider the father of the Constitution, okay, he wrote most of it, okay. Well, James Madison clearly points out all the powers of our federal government and the powers of states. Okay. So the federal government in Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution, you guys can look it up. It has 18 enumerated powers. For those of you who are radical leftists, that means numbered. Anyway, so I always love to say that. So there are 18 powers that our federal government has, which means that there are not more than 18 powers written in the Constitution. That's written in stone. Okay.
Mhm.
And so the only other way that the federal government can get a power is through an amendment to the Constitution. And they made this radically difficult to do. Okay, you got to
Mhm.
get so much of a majority in the House, so much majority in the Senate, and then you got to send it out to the states and get so many majorities of states to sign it. Okay, it's very
Mhm.
difficult to do. All right.
Mm.
So if you think about it, I would say that today, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, about 99% of what our Congress votes on is unconstitutional because they do not have the authority to do it. Now, I'm not this
Mm,
crazy radical right-wing zealot. No, I'm literally telling you, if you read our Constitution, okay,
mhm,
they have a thing, um, uh, they have a clause in there. It's in the preamble, okay, and in the preamble it talks about powers, but people have dumbed us down so much we don't realize what it is. And
mhm,
um, what it says is that, and let me put it this way: during the Constitutional Convention in Independence Hall in Philadelphia, which is about 10 miles from where I am right now, you had Benjamin Franklin. I'm sure you're familiar with him. Everybody knows who Ben was, right? Benjamin Franklin proposed a bill. This is very important too to our way of living today because nobody knows this story over here. Benjamin Franklin proposed a bill that would allow for taxes to maintain and build canals. Now, why canals? Well, because canals back then were the way everything was distributed. The ship would come
mhm,
into port, you'd get a little boat with either a mule or a horse, and they would fill the boat up and they would walk along the canal. And at their certain places, the stewards, the merchants, would come and pick up their ways. Okay, so he wanted to build it. And that's really fun and nice and all that. But a guy named Governor Morris came along and said, "Whoa, wait a minute." And this became a huge discussion. And they said, wait a minute. It became known as the welfare clause, okay? The general welfare clause. And they said, well, what about all the people that are going to pay this tax, but don't get a benefit of it? You don't own a business. You're not having your things, but can't they pay for that through their business? And it worked
mhm,
because it got the delegates to the Constitution. It got them around the country to talk and go, yeah, this guy's right. We shouldn't do this. And so they created what was called the General Welfare Clause. Now, the left will tell you the General Welfare Clause means that we owe everybody a living that doesn't want to work. Okay. But that's not the case. The General Welfare Clause says, okay, if you're going to pass taxation for any bill, okay, at number one, the bill has to be constitutional, it has to be within the 18 powers. All right. That throws
mhm,
out 99% of what we do today. And so it says, then if you're going to tax for it, everybody who's going to pay that tax must benefit from this bill. That
mhm,
eliminates, like I said, about 99% of what we do over here. That
mhm,
is what Trump is trying to get back to. It's very
mhm,
difficult because you have millions of people employed by it's the largest employer in the country. The next largest is Walmart. Go figure. And so you have the largest supply of workforces coming from our federal government, and they want to keep their jobs. They have families that they want to feed, right? And so they do everything they can. We call them the deep state. And
mhm,
so they're the people that really control a lot of what's going on, and they just were not ready for a second Trump term because he is knocking them down left and right. I did a story the other day in a video on it. Trump has won since he's been in office for, I think in the first 4 months he won 16. He went 16-0 in the Supreme Court. He won 16 cases in the Supreme Court and lost not a single one. And it's driving the left mad in this country because they never thought, like, how could they, so now according to them the Supreme Court is rigged. This is why they want to do things to ruin our Supreme Court. They want to add more justices and stuff like that, right? But the fact of the matter is, all that Trump did was said, look, for all these years people thought that a president can't do this. I happen to know I can, so I just want to get you guys to put it in stone and go yes or no, right? And so that's what happened. And so, to answer your original question, all right, I know I digressed a lot. I'm sorry, but I had to do this to get
no,
here.
no, no, it's good.
Yeah, I had to do that. So, in order to answer your original question of what is he doing behind the scenes that nobody's talking about, these are the types of things that he's doing. And he actually said in a speech, I think 2 weeks ago, he said, "So I know a lot of you are saying that you're not really doing many of the things that you promised." And he said, "You have to understand that we have to get us to a place first where we can do that and be justified legally." And then he
Mhm,
smiled and he looked into the camera and he goes, "Don't worry, the best is yet to come." So right now, we on our side, on the MAGA side, the America First movement side, we're holding him to his word. We're saying, okay, we believe you because we understand the mess that our country was in. I mean, for goodness sake, the previous administration nearly destroyed the world I mean, we're
Mm.
finding things out now. They're declassifying things. For example, the FBI, right, was completely corrupted. And they've been corrupted for years, but under Biden, they became like the Gestapo for the Biden administration. And here, many of the things that they did that were criminal, they put in what's called burn bags. I don't know if you've heard that term recently in the
No.
news, but they put them in burn bags. And what that is literally you take it's a leather pouch, you throw documents in it, and you throw it into the incinerator and you burn it so that nobody could ever see it again. Well,
Oh.
they took all the Crossfire Hurricane stuff. Crossfire Hurricane was the Russia thing against
Mhm.
Trump. Okay,
Mhm.
and in fact they found these in a room, and we believe the Obama administration and the Biden administration forgot they were there. It was a room on a floor that wasn't used that much, and they had all these burn bags. They forgot to burn them. Well, guess what? We found them, and we are exposing the hell out of them. And one of the things that we exposed recently, and it's important, is that Barack Obama himself, President of the United States, was behind Operation Crossfire Hurricane, which was he had he had the regular grunts on the ground doing research, doing their due diligence, intelligence research, and they came to him in 2016 and said, "There's no way that Russia could interfere with the election to make any bit of a difference. It's impossible. They don't have the capacity." And Barack said, "Okay, you told me that. We're going to throw that out and do something else." So what he did was he called. We know this because they just declassified it, and Tulsi Gabbard, God bless her, she just revealed it all. All right, and they pointed out that in these documents, it shows that Barack called a top level intelligence meeting. James Clapper, who was the head, he was the DNI, what Tulsi is now, right? You had John Brennan, who was the head of the CIA, a communist, and avowed communist. Okay, you
Imagine that.
yeah, yeah. And then they had well, I think it was I think yeah, it was Eric Holder at the time, because Loretta Lynch didn't get in yet. It was Eric Holder. So the top people in their intel, okay, they had a meeting with Barack, and he said, we're going to throw that report out because that doesn't really help us any, and we want you to go full force and make this seem like Donald Trump colluded with Russia and that they
Mm.
stole the election.
Mhm.
Now we have a thing called treason. And that's what we call this. The statutes. It meets the statutes of treason, which is why they're
Mhm.
all lawyering up right now. And Trump literally said last week, because they're saying you're going to go after Obama. And he said, I think Obama would be covered under immunity, presidential immunity. That was a huge case we had where the Supreme Court ruled on presidential immunity because they never did before. So they said, okay, we're going to tackle it. The left
Mhm.
completely misconstrued it, lied about it. There were 3 sections that they broke it down in. The last 2, he doesn't have immunity. The one where he does is if a president is acting officially as the president of the United States during a scheduled thing that is presidential, he has immunity. And my
Mhm.
argument back to Trump would be, well, I don't think the Supreme Court meant committing treason as part of an official act as president of the United States. So there's a lot going on there. In fact, I created a song and a video, and it's called "The Fall of the Crown," and it's a song about how this whole in 4 minutes it tells you the entire story of the Obama saga of what he did, and these people
Ah.
are all lawyering up right now because they know they're in serious trouble. And Trump, they're saying, "Oh, he's trying to get revenge." Well, you only get revenge on someone that wronged you, right? That's what my answer is. But I truly believe this. I truly believe this. Tell me I drank the Kool-Aid. I don't care. I truly believe this. That he just wants accountability for what they did so that it doesn't happen again. Because throughout all of his lawfare cases, throughout it all, throughout the Russia, throughout the Mueller probe, the impeachments, everything, he kept
Mhm.
saying the same thing. This should never happen to another president. He just kept saying that over and over and over. And so right
Mhm.
now we are still in the phase of we have to make right. There has to be a reckoning for us to go
Mhm.
forward, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not even talking about the COVID reckoning, the lying about
Yep.
the vaccines and all of that. I'm not even
Mhm.
talking about that. I'm just talking
Yep.
about they illegally did to gain power. That's all I'm talking about here. They'll go to the other stuff later on. So Trump and conservatives in Congress, and I'm gonna share something with you. We have what is it? 535 people in Congress. There's 435 in our House and 100 in the Senate. I believe 35 of them actually give a damn about the United States. That's it, and they're known as the Freedom Caucus. They may have more than 35 now, but the Freedom Caucus in the House are the only people that actually want to live by the Constitution and actually want to reform all of the putrid swamp that they live in. And so it's going to be an uphill battle, but they have a champion behind them, which is the president. He truly wants to reform our country. And so the left, yeah, you're right. It would be a good start. I know, 8 years of waiting. You're absolutely right. And right now, you see, the thing is, they throw lawfare at you. They make it up as they go. What we on our side have to do is we got to cross all the T's, dot all the I's, make sure that everything we're going to charge them for has enough evidence so that even a DC jury will find them guilty. At this point, I'm recommending they move jurisdiction out of DC, because there's no way you're going to that any conservative or Trump especially is going to win anything in DC. The pool is that dirty. They hate Trump in DC. They can't stand him because he's the one that fired a lot of them already, and he's going to fire a hell of a lot more. He just got another win with the Supreme Court that he's allowed to continue letting people go because it's such a bloated government, as most are, but in the United States, it is so bloated. Like I said, we are the number one. That is the number one employer in our country right now, and it has to end.
It's I've got I've my notebook is full of notes and many questions that I want to ask you about
Go
now,
for it.
Rich.
I'll give you my best
Well,
answers.
yes, we're going to have to arrange for another time for you to join us because we've got a streamer, Michael Gray Griffith from Cafe Lockdown, coming on directly after us. But I do want to make a couple of comments about that. Oh, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about as well. But even, and I have to bring in RFK Jr. quickly, more as a comment in relation to what you just said, because, I, for one, have done numerous shows about the disquiet that is brewing in regards to RFK Jr. and Maha. But in the past matter of hours, we've had posts where RFK Jr. And his office as secretary, having a bit of conflict with the American pediatrics and all these sorts of things, without getting into any detail, and those sorts of things, particularly for someone like me who spends a lot of time watching these people, analysing what they're going on. Not saying that I know a whole lot, but I do keep tabs on things. What's happened in the past few hours with RFK Jr. and the pediatrics certainly puts up uh, pricks up my ears, if you like, because the disquiet seems like it was some sort of fire blanket, and now is there something else going on there? And as always, things are not as they are presented to us to
Naturally.
actually be. And so that's why speaking to you today, and obviously in anticipation of having you on the show, very, very happy and intrigued because, as I said, we live in these echo chambers. Even in independent media, we still live in echo chambers. And to actually hear from someone who's actually living there, I think is really, really important. And particularly moving into the are we seeing the end of the internet as we know it, and the communities that we've been allowed to build so far as, you know, swapping information and giving people a different narrative to the mainstream. Are we seeing the end of the internet? So touching base, making connections with people such as yourself, and making sure that we keep those connections, communities in touch as we move forward. I think it's really important because I do suspect that we are seeing the end of the internet era as we see it right now. Rich, where is the best place for people to visit you? We've got your YouTube channel at the bottom of the page. I do recommend people go along and subscribe to you on YouTube because your videos are fantabulous,
Oh,
especially
thank
if
you.
people want to hear about what's going on in the US. Tell us about your other social medias and where people can find you
Yeah.
and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, everywhere on social media, and I'm RPW Media. You can find me there. My website is obviously rpwmedia.com. Yeah, well, I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube, obviously. We're on X. Where the heck else? We're on BitChute, if you're familiar with BitChute. We're on
Mm.
Odyssey. We're on a lot of sites, but it's always RPW Media, and that's my name, Richard Patrick Welsh. That's why I picked RPW Media. So that's where we're at. You can get anything from us. My email is rich@rpwmedia.com if you want to get in touch with me. And thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no, because especially the topics this is just my opinion. The topics that you talk about on your YouTube channel in particular are the things that I don't hear from all of the other independent media spheres.
Yeah.
And I just think that's fantastic because we even we have to be able to reach outside
Yeah.
of what where we're being corralled into. So yeah, no, fantastic.
So now I got to
All
get you
right.
on my show. You have to come on
Yeah, that'd
my
be great.
show. So I will set that up and I'll reach out. Yeah,
Fantastic.
definitely. Yeah.
Fantabulous. Thank you, Ron. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. And thank you for all your wonderful comments. Please stick around for Michael Gray Griffiths. He will be joining you all very shortly. And please make sure you go along to Rich's YouTube channel, as you said, upon all the other social medias as well, whichever you prefer. And yeah, many thanks, Rich, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very cool. Let's get out of here. All right. Very